Okay, we'll call to order the December 5th meeting of the Historic Resources Board. Please rise for the flag salute. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll note that all commissioners are present, including our newest commissioner, and with that, we'll have the swearing in of Commissioner Medeiros.
Stand and raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, who state your name,
I, David Medeiros,
do solemnly swear that I will support and defend
do solemnly swear I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome back. Thank you.
Okay, the next item would be the introduction of our new city planner.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, members of the community, my name is Ed Tweez. I'm the interim city manager. I was appointed in September, but this is the first opportunity we've had to meet with the Planning Commission. And we have retained the services of Mr. James Walgren, who will serve as our contract city planner. And he will handle most of the meeting this evening, and he prepared the agenda. James has extensive city planning experience. He had been a city planner, director of community development for the city of Los Altos and Santa Clara County, and most recently, he helped manage the, what was the name of the RMA Resource Management Agency?
Yes.
In the county of San Benito, and he's been with us for a couple of weeks. His responsibilities include not just staffing the Planning Commission, but helping me organize the community development functions, including the building department of building plan check, building inspections, and code enforcement. And later on in the subsequent meeting, we'll talk a little bit about some of the projects that are underway. But I wanted to introduce James Walgren to you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have any items from the public?
No, I don't have anything for questions.
Okay, so seeing none, we'll move forward if there is none. Informal project review. This is an opportunity for anybody to come and speak before us that might have some type of project that they're interested in doing in the future or like to make us aware of. Is there anybody that has any information like that they'd like to share? Okay, so action items. Number one, approval of affidavit of posting of the agenda. Do I have a motion? Second? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. With no abstentions. The next item is item B, approve the proposal to install San Juan Bautista 3rd Street Historical District plaques on qualifying historic buildings. The proposal represents phase 1 of the project with 29 identified buildings. The applicant is Rose's House Organization. Is there somebody, or do we have staff report first?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. James Walgren, pleasure to be here. This is a proposal to install up to 29 historic building identification plaques on specific buildings in the San Juan Bautista 3rd Street Historic District. There's an exhibit of what these plaques would look like in the packet, and I believe the applicants will have a true built plaque to show this evening. This is a project that the City Council is aware of, and in fact has granted $7,500 for the construction and installation of these signs. The applicants are the Rosa's House organization, and they'll be presenting and providing more detail. And then I would just conclude by saying that if the program is approved by the Historic Resources Board, the location of these plaques, of course, will first be subject to the approval of the property owner, or if they choose to even want a plaque on their building. And the applicants are working towards getting support for placing those plaques, and they'll explain that status. But the actual application and installation of the signs will need to be coordinated with the property owners and the city planning staff and the Rosa's House organization. But with that, we are supporting the project and will be available to take questions.
Okay, is there somebody from the organization that'd like to make a presentation also, or let's see?
My name is Ann Fritsch, and I'm representing the Rosa's House organization, and I'm co-chairman of the outreach committee for this project that we're doing. So Janet Gallardi is the other co-chair.
I'm the other co-chair.
Well, what this project is, it's kind of multifaceted, not just the plaques, which is, you know, your area, of course, but it includes the what we call the walking trail, which is the downtown area, and then eventually outlying areas. On the plaques, there'll be a QR code, which will be able to, people will be able to identify the different buildings. We have a website that they can go to using this QR code. So it's kind of a whole big bundle, but you know, what we really want to talk about tonight are the flags. Let's see. So far, we have designed the flags. We have one of our committee members. Well, I should say on this committee we have representatives of the City of San Juan Bautista, the Strategic Planning Committee, the Historic Society, the Rosa's House organization, and other interested people like the Rotary Club and the Native Daughters of the Golden West. All are very much interested in it, or actually helping us organize and bring to fruition this whole project.
Community Foundation, is that?
Oh, well, that's one of our funders.
Yes, you be sure to say that.
Yeah.
Community Foundation, Santa Anita County.
Yes, we do have funding from the City of San Juan, the Community Foundation of Santa Anita County, the supervisor from District 1. Two?
We're in two, aren't we?
Yeah. I don't know what changes over in history, I tell you. Let's see, and who else?
Some individuals?
We do have some
We have some
individuals.
individual
Of course,
funders.
we're open to taking more donations from anyone. I think we can move right on to the plaques themselves.
Yeah.
Claire Ann's our plaque chairman.
And then we'll be back to answer any questions after that.
Thank you.
Good evening, all. My name's Mary Ann Steger. I'm a resident here in town, and I was helping this project by designing the plaques. And I'm working with Shipper Design, one of our local businesses here. It's been a pleasure working with them. I like working with our local people. What I'm going to pass around is the material that the plaques are going to be made out of. And it's bronze, and you'll see that the background is darker and has a slight texture to it. We're going for something natural. And if you had gotten in your, I'm not sure what you had received in your packets, but anyway, just as a demonstration as what the, oh, so you're right on with me, aren't you? And somebody was prepared.
Show the camera.
And I will show you. Did I get that? There we go. And so the other day, we, Shauna and Tim and I walked around the town looking at the buildings to see where these plaques would go. And so we're working on that, and as you heard, we're working on getting the permission and the people who own the buildings on board. And I'll say they've been very enthusiastic and very supportive, and I'm really pleased. We're thinking that this particular design here will be very visible, easy to read. And as you see, it has the mission bell. It's San Bautista, it's a 3rd Street Historic District, and then we have the name and the date. That's the most salient information. We may have a subtext here if we find out that we need just to have just a tad more information to clarify. And then again, this is a plaque attached separately that identifies it with walking trail. We left them separate because in case down the line technology changes, they're no longer using QR codes, they may come up with something else. The person may not want to be a part of this, then it can be easily removed and at least the identification. So, those are the plaques. And
Will there be space between the two?
a slight amount. A slight amount. They won't be abutted up. I don't think they would be handled like that. Any other questions on this?
So, let me see here, but is that the actual size? Or
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes, it is the actual size. We worked that out with the printer and stuff, because if we made it any smaller, we would have trouble with the manufacturing of it. Okay, any other questions?
My only concern at this point is basically, I know that bronze is very, very nice material, but I know there have been a lot of bronze things ripped up around here, and one is a sign up there on the Deanza Trail, and that does concern me a little bit, because it is something that people...
It is, you're very right, it is something that could be of concern. I would like to have, Tim, would you like to say something about adhering to the building?
I could, or you could.
Okay, well, we're using for our installation, because they are going on historic buildings, on historic materials, whether it be adobe, sandstone, zinc, wood. If it is the old material, the historic material, Tim, who is really quite the guy, he's going to defend himself about putting them on, and I'd like to have him more explain his technique, because he's the boss.
I'm Tim Lance, general contractor at the Historic Preservation.
Is that?
I think so. We took a fairly lengthy walking tour, going around and looking at all the buildings. They were asking for my input on methods of attachment. Because I do historic preservation, drilling historic buildings is against the rules. Adding nails, adding screws is something that's not desired. You're making a hole in the building. Some of these buildings are 150 years old. And how many times can you be putting attachments on the buildings before the whole building becomes Swiss cheese? And if we're talking about preserving history, then we have to think about those sorts of things. So what we had come up with, or what I had come up with on our tour, was most of these buildings could use, for attachment of the plaques, adhesives. Most adhesives will not penetrate the coat of paint that's on there, or the 100 years of paint that's on there, but will adhere soundly to the paint. Another suggestion that I'd come up with is not using the bronze plaques, but rather enameled steel, which will last 100 years or more. And they're lighter, easier to apply, and less likely to be stolen.
Okay. That answers that question. Now, you said that you had 29 residents or buildings, and I see 35 on this list. Are we going to add to this? You said you had 29 buildings that you were going to do this to, and I see 30, 35, 34, 35, 36, 37. Well, Pavia building is all 35.
May I just address that now?
Yes, we want to, thank you.
We have plans, this is phase 1.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's the downtown district. We have plans for up to, at this time, up to what, 29? Possibly 29. Now, the numbers that you're seeing there, you know, those are not, if you count the numbers down, it might be only just the 29. The numbers are not in order, because number 1 is the mission, I believe. And so we're only including on that list, those are getting plaques. On our pamphlet that shows the map, you'll see the missing numbers.
All the missing houses.
So with the magic word pamphlet map, hi, I'm Helena Kleinsmith. I own a Fool's Gold here in town, and I'm also a resident. And I'm right across the way from Rose's house. And my interest is certainly in historic preservation, and that's why I'm volunteering my time to this endeavor. And thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. My background in producing collateral and information caused me to volunteer to do that facet of this project. We will have these wonderful identifying plaques on our historic buildings that people can see 24 hours a day. However, we have the supporting, substantiating information to go along with that. I'm going to pass along one of these for all of you, but this is a walking trail of historic San Juan Bautista, an introduction with respect to our city and its history, and then the beginning of listing the buildings with some of the old illustrations that have appeared in prior collateral that was produced, especially in the time frame of when we had a Chamber of Commerce here in San Juan. And this information fleshes out what you're looking at every time you're looking at one of the plaques. It has the name of the building, the date of the building, and what its significance is in terms of its past and its glory. When you open this up, there is the map that we keep referring to. This map has a key legend on it that tells you that the dots that are in black with a number on them are our historic district buildings that will be receiving these plaques. And there's a little icon here that actually shows you what the plaque looks like as you're walking about. Keep a lookout for this because you're going to see a historic building. It goes on to list 49 historic buildings and sites of interest and of note in dots that are in white. So that's how we differentiate. So when you're taking the walking trail, our perspective was to start at the mission and fan out, because everybody's grounding without saying you are here is the mission. You know you are there. There's the plaza, there's the mission, there's the area. So your way of taking the walking trail, we did it as thoughtfully as possible to give a close and concise trail that would be all of these historic buildings with their plaques, and then a more expanded all the way up to and including the VFW and the cemetery, and back around over to the Twitchell House and the Gardella House. So there's a lot of ways people can approach this map from any angle they want, but wherever they are, they can identify what they're standing in front of. Again, as Anne reiterated, there is a QR code on here. That code will eventually go into the background information on each and every building. So as you scan it with your smartphone, you're going to find out all the other history and information that has been ardently gathered all along by our subcommittees to help the public in their understanding and knowledge of our place in Central California's history. And as an educational tool, because of the vast number of visitors and school children and teachers that we have here. So we wanted to see this as a tool for them as well. On the back of the map is the locator in terms of the Greater Bay Area and Monterey Bay and how long the distances are. I'm sure, Shauna, will you be discussing the audio?
Probably not.
Okay. The other thing is this particular QR code, then the other phase of this project that we're growing towards will be to implement a walking trail audio tour. So you can actually have that on your smartphone when you scan that QR code. So there's work ahead of us, but I feel we've come a very long way since April, and I'm very happy to hand each one of you one of these particular brochure maps that you can, yes, thank you very much. And open to any other questions you might have with respect to that aspect.
Any additional questions from commissioners
No,
or comments?
She answered my question about audio, because that's wonderful.
Okay, yeah, it's very exciting to be on board with all of this. So again, I hope that this evening, the enthusiasm of everybody will show you just very much how dedicated we are and how careful we're being in terms of our projected thoughts to do this in a thoughtful and historic manner.
Okay, speaking
Thank
of
you.
the fourth grade teacher, I would like to make a comment. I
Yes.
just know that the Plaza History Association at one time had what they called a treasure map with little things, and you'd have to go through all the museum and find all these things. Might be something fun for the fourth graders to do, if they develop maybe a curriculum kind of treasure map for them that highlights.
That's a brilliant suggestion, absolutely, because there's so much history in each and every
And you
building.
can maybe have more than one, I mean, depending on which aspect you want to look at.
Sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, yes.
I guess a question for the organization in general. I'd just like to ask, we've got all these different, we have the Historical Society, we have the San Juan Bautista Committee, we have the Strategic Planning Committee, we have all these different agencies, you might say, that's working towards the city. Why was it important for the Rosa House organization to be a separate group from all that? And the second question to that is, how is all of those other agencies supporting the efforts of the plaque? And my comment to that, I like what I see. I think it's a very positive thing for the city of San Juan. But I'd like, I guess because I'm a new kid on the block, I'd like to know how that's being generated in such a way as far as support from the city itself. And what are we doing to the other agencies that are in support of this to help them work together and, let's say, move the historical part of San Juan forward? How does that work? Maybe it's too much of a question to ask.
No, not really. I think you hit it right on the head. The Rosa's House organization was formed originally to support this kind of activity in the community. Historically oriented, the arts, the history, the education, all of these things involved with the history of the community. And one of the things we saw that we needed to do is reach out to other organizations and pull everyone together so we could all work on it, rather than one particular group taking it and then having the ownership of it and other kinds of plaque that can come up with that down the road. This way, it's spread out amongst a number of people. And that's why we have a committee that's composed of various volunteers who want to take part in this, who were excited about doing it.
Do you think you're getting the kind of support that you were looking for as far as from the other groups and what have you? Is there something we need to do further on that as far as that goes?
Well, there's always a need for more outreach, more fundraising, because, this is phase 1, but we're looking at phase 2 and ultimately probably phase 3 as we move out of town and into the surrounding areas. But I think we have pretty good funding to bring this to fruition at this point.
One comment I think I'd like to add to what Commissioner Madero said. I think we say you got all these splinter groups, and you've got one main group, and they should be tied up, because you don't want to be going into this project and all of a sudden a couple of these side splinter groups will come to the city and say, hey, we don't like what they're doing.
we should do this. I mean, and that'd be a concern of mine, that you have this thing tight so that we don't have, anybody coming to, hit you from the side.
I think that's why we have representatives from all these different groups.
So that's what we're concerned.
We work closely together, we have monthly meetings and work out all the details and whatnot and bring up our concerns at the meetings and by consensus, come to a decision on them. So far it's been working pretty well.
One comments I had is, it surprised me to learn that there were people who drove by on 156 and didn't know we and the mission were here.
Yeah.
And from my experience, if you don't tell people who you are, you don't blame them for not knowing. So what I feel that you're doing, I think is a great project. It appears to be consistent with the city planning policies, and I think you're doing something good for the city and for the long term.
One more thing, I know there's another, I know about all these other, what about the monument sign committee? Is this somehow tying into that too as well,
Not at this point.
Okay.
But there's hope down the road because obviously we want signage throughout, not just the town, but along the highway and out in the more remote districts. So we can eventually bring attention to places like the Anza Trail, St. Francis Retreat, some of the other hiking and bicycling trails around. And promote historic.
I think this matter that's being discussed is very important, and over the years, lots of folks have brought the issue to not only the council, but to the planning commission about highway signage, and nobody's been able to attack that. I have heard in the past that it was always an issue that Caltrans was a friction point. But I think we need to get aggressive about that. I mean, I was driving back from up in the north today, and you go through all those towns like Petaluma and whatever. There's a sign that says downtown historic district, along with some other signs we need like no Jake brakes or reduced truck engine noise. But I'm just wondering what the proper landing spot for a project. And I'm sorry to get off track here, but I think we should try to get some synergism around that and what the proper lead agency, if you will, would be to do that. Is it the strategic planning committee? An effort like this where you guys have combined several, groups together? Yeah, please.
Well, right now, I know that the San Juan committee is working on that sign. They talked about some of the designs and how they might design it. I don't
on
know.
On the highway?
Yes, for the highway.
Is that right?
And they want something sort of like San Miguel has.
Okay.
I thought we approved that already.
Well,
we had approved the design a couple of years ago.
I mean, the tricky thing is I don't think we can approve it. I think Caltrans has to do it.
No, Mr. Ponce,
Well, they're going to be putting in a land that I think is not Caltrans land.
Well, that's the monument sign, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm talking about actual highway signage.
Oh,
Those brown signs that you enter a community.
We have one coming north, but you're right.
Okay. So anyway, I'd like to, I don't know how we get some synergism around that. Maybe some volunteer from this body and some of the other, community groups to do that. But I just think it would be an important project for this town.
I also think that there's a lot of work that's being done, and I hate to think that some of the work doesn't overlap needlessly, where you might be going in one direction, and all of a sudden there's another group that's already been there. You know what I'm saying? So I'm hoping that this body will help channel and funnel us in the right direction, and hoping that all of you would come to us and ask for our help. And I think the city council is also giving funds as well, right, from the city?
To this project.
And that should be a connecting point right there that, to make sure the funds are going and not, it's not being wasted and what have you. Yeah. But I think what you're generating here, I think that outreach that you're going with, I think that's great. I think that energy you should start fostering into the other groups too as well. We're kind of going in one direction.
Okay, I think I'd like to open this up to public comment, and then if there's additional questions or comments.
You're not quite finished.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, finished, John.
Yeah, absolutely, Georgiana, I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
Georgiana has to have her say, John.
That's quite all right.
Thank you, and it is such a pleasure to have the comments from our two old planners, because I know that I was very proud to serve with both of you. And I've been watching John all my life, I think, at planning, council, whatever, so it's really a pleasure to be here with you. And Scott, saw you growing up. Let me, because I'm doing an aside right now, as I approached all of these property owners, and there are 16 property owners for 26 buildings, and I noticed, I had to make phone calls to some of the other people who are in charge now of their parents' buildings, and I discovered that there are a lot of young people very proud of the work their parents have done to keep San Juan the way it is. I spoke to the Bluebird, the Ponce family. The young person in charge now was planning to put a plaque on that building. And this comes along just perfectly to fit in with her plans. So it's been a real eye-opener, and actually bringing to my attention that all the work I've been doing all these last 60 years in San Juan, which incidentally doesn't make me a native, is coming together. And every time I've been to the strategic committee, and which I think is the lead agency for all of this plaque group, I am saying to them, thank God for the young people coming back to San Juan and taking their place in the community to help us save it. So whatever you can suggest to us to make that happen, please go ahead and do that.
Great.
Now down to the nitty-gritty. It was our pleasure to talk to the interim city manager, practically his first day here, to approach him with some of our forms and our approach to the whole thing, and asked him to pass it by the city attorney. Those things were done. In the interim, I thought to myself, well, we don't need our own form, really. Why don't I just go in the rack in there and pull off the applications that the city has always provided, fill them out, and that is exactly what we have done. We sent them to each owner for each building and made copies, and that's what we presented to staff, and he drew up his report, and now here we are today. While we were talking with owners, two problems came up. One is, can we be assured that just because we put a plaque on the building, that we won't be singled out by other planning commissions, city council rules, and so forth, that we'll have to do something special just because we got the plaque. And so the Rosas House Organization Incorporated is actually our lead agency, and they have prepared this statement that I have put on your desk that assures property owners that is not our intention and is our hope that the city council will never pass rules and single out the people with the plaques. The other remark at the bottom is that we want to assure the homeowners that, the property owners, that when someone puts his telephone up to the QR code and sends them to a website, that the information on that is strictly edited and controlled by the Rosas House organization, with only what is known in the public is going to be put on that website. It's not a social network where anybody can make any remark. So we're hoping, I have passed this to several of the property owners, and they think that will be sufficient. So one of these letters will go to every one of the property owners within this week, so that they have that assurance. do you have any questions or anything related to those remarks? And I had checked with Franco, and he thought that was a good idea to assure property owners in writing. Our whole process used as the basis are DPR forms, Department of Parks and Recreation forms, that are our official inventory forms for the buildings in San Juan. The eligibility for the buildings within this district is not just something that happens because you're in the district. The district incorporates an area of a lot of buildings. Not every building qualifies. Not every building is eligible to be on the National Register. And so when you see that there is no plaque going to be on the Mission Cafe, even though that's one of the most important spots in San Juan, in the past, the owner made so many changes that it's no longer eligible to be a separate National Register building. However, it is still in the district. There are 2 buildings in our district that are on the National Register. One is the Adobe at the corner. It's of Emily Renzel. It is considered to be a national landmark of the same quality, level of integrity and importance, significance, I believe is the word, as the Mission or the Castro Breen. The other is the Rosa's house. There are people owning buildings outside of the district, like the Morentis house and the Wilcox house at the stoplight. It's been altered quite a lot. I don't know if it would be eligible any longer, but it is currently on the National Register. So we have other buildings. We have Ann Fritsch to thank for the Rosa's house, the Morentis house being on the National Register already, years ago, when she worked on that. So she's been here doing this history quite a long time. The Historical Society sent out the initial letter to all of these owners, just to get some feedback. We had no rejections. And then we sent out the whole packet, which you see before you, to all the owners, and we're getting them back. There are several buildings within the district that don't really qualify beside Mission Cafe. One is our old real estate office, the land office, next to where Pat's building, because it was built in 1990. So, and I haven't even told the committee this, I didn't know it till tonight. I met Josie from Santana Buildings. I asked her to look up the little building that is next to the entrance of the Hardiness. It used to be one of our real estate offices as well. But that whole building came down with the earthquake, and it was rebuilt in 1991. So despite the fact it's been chosen by the committee, the group, to get a plaque, I'm not so sure that it will, when we go back and evaluate the information that just came to us tonight. So this proves that as we go along, we're going to learn more things. We might have to change things. But tonight, we're just asking you to approve of our concept for the plaques, the fact that we're going to place them on the buildings with the best advice we can get, and we're going to coordinate this whole thing with the brochure, the map, a website, and all of it just to enhance San Juan Bautista and bring people here to enjoy it the same as we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgiana.
Question?
There may be some questions, Georgiana. Let's hear some public comment, if there's any. None? So I think this is an exciting project. This project, or similar projects have been talked about this in the past, and I think it's really exciting. I'm wholeheartedly in support of this. I don't sense that anybody has any desire to go through the detail of the look or the feel of the plaques or anything like that. Everybody seems comfortable with that?
Very heavy.
Yeah. Okay. So is there any additional staff comments? Okay. So I would look for a motion.
I move that we accept the design of the plaques as they have been presented to us, to be applied to the buildings as they learn which buildings need to be applied to and honor that integrity of historical value.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the proposal as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, no opposition, so that was...
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all your hard work, sincerely.
Yes, thank you.
I think some of this hard work is just beginning now.
Yeah, maybe. Easy part.
This is just phase one, yeah.
Yeah, let's figure out how to influence Caltrans to get some signs out there. Yeah.
Stop the tides.
Let's invite the governor down here.
Okay.
No. Okay, are there any additional comments from members of the Historic Resources Board?
I had a question. I hate to ask this, but
Go ahead.
We'll listen.
the Adobe at the end of town, it just got a nice facelift.
Yeah.
Is that something you guys saw a while back ago, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm talking to her real quick. Okay.
Yeah, no, she's done a lot of research on that thing. She has re-roofed it. They came by and asked about taking off the lime, but putting new stuff on there.
Looks great.
And they obviously found some problems on the opposite end, and so looks like they had to beef up the wall.
Yeah.
And then she did work inside, and there's a whole historical report on it. So yeah, this is going to be around for another 100 years, I guess.
No, it looks great. I like the way they exposed the Adobe and
Oh, they left the
section look like
Yeah.
it kind of.
A lot of people, this happened at Colton Hall in Monterey. Everybody wanted to see the Adobes. Well, Adobes were never that way because the lime was on there to keep the adobe from melting in the puddle.
Yeah.
So the lime was to protect it. And we had to convince people of that, but whatever she's doing, I'm sure it's going to work.
Yeah.
But she did ask, you want to show that it's an adobe, and that was an option.
Okay, any staff comments? Okay. All right, motion to adjourn the Historic Resources Board meeting.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
All those in favor? Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
What time did we start this one? 6:52.
Where did that go? Okay, we'll now call to order the December 5th meeting of the Planning Commission. The chair will note that all members are present. Okay, do we have any public comment for items that are not on the agenda?
Yes, Bautista study.
Hi.
Hi, Mendes.
Good evening. I hope everyone's well. My name is Bautista Snowdy. I live off 6th Street, and I wanted to make a comment to the Planning Commission about concern that I have that I will be voicing tomorrow night at the public hearing of the draft ordinance for cannabis business in San Juan Bautista.
Excuse me for just a minute. If we could ask...
You start me over, Trish?
Hey, folks, if we could hold down the comments back there, the reporter partner. Okay, thank you. All right, sorry, Mentisa.
It's okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So my comments about, I have a concern. Tomorrow, as you know, that we're going to be having a meeting reviewing the draft ordinance for cannabis. So I just want to remind the Planning Commission that Matt Orbach, before he left, he created a sensitive use buffer map. And basically, it showed where all of the sensitive uses determined by the state would not be appropriate for cannabis business to be located. And I think that was a great work that he did. And also, I think it's important that the Planning Commission, this body, that your services be utilized in the zoning and the land use element for cannabis businesses. Now, the draft ordinance as is, I believe if it were to be adopted with the arbitrary line at the south of the 156, that would kind of render the Planning Commission useless in any land use decisions or zoning decisions to deal with cannabis businesses, because it will be written into an ordinance. So in order to protect our due process of this commission and also the city, I just really want to encourage you to consider making comments about how to best use your services and use as a body in San Juan Bautista. I'm going to be asking that the City Council be able to adopt the sensitive use buffer map as a priority above putting any preemptive zoning and land use restrictions on cannabis businesses. And I understand we're kind of in a hypothetical situation because no ordinance has been adopted yet. I would just think that having, erroneous zoning restrictions that could potentially trigger the need to do an environmental impact report when we have a planning commission that could, I trust your ability to make decisions. If there is an opportunity to see an applicant before you, that you can make sure that that applicant is definitely in compliance with state law and can also benefit the city by being strategically placed in other zones besides just the industrial zone across on the south side of the 156. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that. I'll be talking about that more tomorrow. And just thank you for your time. I hope that made sense and I didn't ramble too much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Any additional public comment?
No, I don't have any other speaker cards.
Okay. There's an opportunity, again, for anybody with any informal projects that they'd like to review, talk to the Planning Commission about future plans or endeavors. This would be the opportunity to do that. I don't think staff has received any requests to do so, so we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Before you do that,
Yeah.
we have Commissioner Medeiros as a new commissioner, and there's no place on here that he's involved in that. He came in at the HRB. If you look in the Planning Commission records today, there will be no David Medeiros. So we should introduce him for the record.
Okay, but he wouldn't need to be sworn in again.
No, just to be introduced him so that we can say that because he's on two,
Yeah.
we did on the first one.
Okay, so the chair will note that Commissioner Medeiros has been appointed to this body as well, and welcome again.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any members of the public that would like any, or the commission, any items on the consent agenda removed
Yeah,
or discussed?
yeah.
Okay.
I want to pull the minutes of the meeting of August 1. There's several corrections I'd like to have made. I'll work with staff on that, and they should have them ready for the next meeting.
Okay. So then I'd look for a motion to approve the affidavit of posting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, and so then we will table item B to the next regular meeting, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, motion to, so that's your motion. Do I get a second to that motion, please?
I move that we table the August 1st, 2017 minutes.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, discussion items. We have a staff report here?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is a request to consider the city manager approval of 2 new civic signs that were, one each were constructed at the City Hall building and the Public Works Department building. And the reason that we're bringing this to the Planning Commission for review, and these signs can be in the attached exhibits, is that these were signs that were put up by the Public Works crews. They weren't really known about by the city manager nor authorized by the city manager. They are stylistically very similar to the other street signs in downtown San Juan Bautista and other public signs, including park signs. But the finish of these signs is not at the same level as the other signs, and since they are civic signs on public buildings, we did want to bring it to the Planning Commission for review and comment, and then the city manager will take those comments into consideration and otherwise move forward to approve these. So this is really more of an informational item, but also to take public comments. And then lastly, you can see in the Luck Memorial Library exhibit, there is a difference in finish between these 2 sign types. So that's really what I think the city staff was most concerned about.
Can you clarify that? What do you mean a difference in style?
Level of finish. If you just look at the individual routering of the letters.
Take a couple of the letters
And the font too.
Yeah, the font and how they're finished. And
The font is different.
Okay, I see that.
I'll start the comments. We worked for a couple of years, even on Thursday mornings, special meetings, discussions, doing a sign code, because the other one had been adopted. The city council shot it back to the commission and said, "What is this?" And by the time I came in, we spent probably 2 years on this thing for various interruptions. And so everybody comes in now has to toe the line on the sign. All of a sudden, somebody puts one up there on their own without getting approval. If you're going to have signs, there should be a continuity of design. And we're getting, well, this is kind of loose, this is kind of close to. Well, it is or it isn't. And I have a real problem with somebody just coming along and say, "Hey, who's going to do this?" Wait a minute. This was a planning commission issue.
Yeah.
It should have been brought to us to start with. So I want to hang a few heads or something, but that's where I'm coming from.
Is that sign code that you're talking about, that was citywide?
It's an ordinance, it's a municipal code. I forget the section number, we call it the sign
citywide, though? I
code.
mean, as far as,
Oh, yeah.
or is it just the
It's an
historic district?
ordinance of the city of, all these ordinances are put into one book called the municipal code.
No, I understand that. You don't have to explain that to me. What I'm asking you is the sign ordinance that you're talking about, is that specifically for the historic district, or is it for
The entire
a business
city.
in front of Ted Thoney's place over here on McCormick? Okay.
Okay, so when I saw this posted on Facebook, I made the assumption that somebody within the cities had authorized this, and I kind of assumed that probably public buildings were exempt from going through that process. In fact, I think they are, but that does not take away from the point that there should have been some input, some direction, in my opinion. Although I applaud the effort of the city crews that did these signs, or whoever the individual was, or individuals, because there was nothing there. So I think the public will have an opportunity to speak here. I think the one thing I would really like clarification on is this point about signs, because if that happened after I was on the commission years ago, I understand, but is that true that the sign ordinance does not apply only to the historic district? It applies to all of the town?
It's a citywide ordinance.
Okay, all right.
See, and we just ran all these folks, signs here, and we're going to, their design, the location, they're going to have to toe the line, or they're going to be pulled off.
Okay, I get it. Yeah. Okay, is there any additional comments from commissioners? I'd like to open this up to, go ahead.
Can we just have these signs up temporarily until we come with a solution as how we're going to deal with this and in the near future? Are they going to be replaced? Are they going to be Are we going to put an official sign up there? I think it needs to be addressed here at the Planning Commission. And I think we need to go with our sign ordinance that says that this is what we go by.
Okay.
We haven't had that opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure about the temporary part. I think that's a separate issue, but I am in line with Ernie over here that I don't want to see a precedent set where, oh, okay, somebody was nice and wanted to do this for us, well, thank you, but there's a precedent here that I don't want to step on, to have our processes are set there because the people want us to be able to regulate these kind of things for the continuity of the city. So it's hard for me to condone having him just put a sign in.
Is the public building, are the public buildings exempt from this?
No, it's for the entire city. I mean, it's
That's what you want.
I'm asking.
It's entirely accurate that the ordinance applies to the entire city. Clearly, the city's commercial buildings where commercial signs occur is in the historic district. These are civic signs. They're not subject to the same processes, but I would treat what you have in front of you as essentially the same design application. That's what the purpose of the historic district design application process is. These aren't subject to that because they're public identification buildings, but still, they're before you, so I would use the same design criteria. Are these appropriate for the locations? Are they appropriate for the downtown historic district? And are they sufficiently consistent with the other city signs downtown?
I find the quality a bit lacking. I even looked at the sign over at the cemetery to look at the lettering to see what it had. It's slightly different than the Karl Martin look. But, to me, it seems, and I know that this font that he's using, especially on the E there, and the A's are I think, entirely different font.
They look to me like what Alex Zeller used to do around here. And at one point in time, Alex Zeller was a new woodworker, and he honed his skills and came up with some beautiful stuff. I get the whole professional look and all that kind of stuff, but sometimes if it's a little too polished, it looks a little too phony, in my opinion. But and as far as the cemetery, I think that's a Zeller sign, Georgiana? Is that I don't remember. Okay.
The library is a hobby. This is our second sign on the library.
Okay. That's all I have to say. Somebody worked pretty hard at trying to help out, and I'm just a little concerned with that.
I appreciate your effort. I just don't want to see a precedent set that shouldn't be
Okay.
set.
Public comment, please.
Thank you. Georgiana Gallardi, 2nd Street. Thank you, Ernest, for bringing this to our attention. It seems to me that I have said so many years, possibly from this podium or from that side of the bench, Public Works needs to take the same path as the rest of us to set a good example of how the city goes about its business. So these signs, it's simply coming before this group so that the whole public sees what's going on, understands it, gets it ironed out, and comes to us. A big grief of mine, not related specifically to signs, is when the library put glass doors in front of it, so that now we see on the library glass a whole lot of information signs. That whole idea of putting those types of doors in that library should have been brought to the public rather than just Public Works went down and put them in, my opinion. So, amen, Ernest. I'm so happy that we're talking about this. I think the whole city process needs to come through the HRB and planning, just so that those of us who are part of the public know what's going on and have some idea to come related to it and help make the best of our city. Thank you.
I agree with you.
Additional public comment?
This town is a historical town, and we pride ourselves in our historical buildings. Some buildings are in better shape than others. I looked at the signs when I read the packet, and I like them. I'm not an artist, and I know that there's quite a bit of few artists right here. I like the signs. I think they have character. And I thank the city crew for taking the initiative to do something that was needed, had been talked about for a long time. I appreciate the work that the previous Planning Commission did and the Historical Resource Board did on the sign ordinance. But if we're going to really uphold that sign ordinance, we need enforcement. There's a bunch of neon signs all over town that are not part of our city ordinance. I think we should be appreciative of the city crew that wanted to contribute to this community. And to me, those signs match the signs that are on our streets. I say keep them and thank the city crew.
Any additional public comment? Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission for comments and or direction.
Comment I would make is you can't do good illegally.
Can't what?
You cannot do good illegally. Mm-hmm. There is a process, and it applies to everybody equally, and that's the way things should be done.
And I have to say, I agree with that.
Well, we can't take action right now. Again, I'm saying we need to turn this over to the city staff to address it properly in such a way that it comes before the planning commission where we can make a decision on it based on what their report is. That's what I think we should do. I think it should be a temporary situation until we come up with a solution and an answer how we're going to deal with this.
I'd second that.
Yeah.
Okay, and just for background, we're relatively certain in your discussions with the folks that erected the sign, they weren't given any direction from the previous city manager or anything to that effect? Not that that makes a difference. I just would like to know the background.
That's correct.
Okay.
What you say is correct. They were not given direction.
So that's a unilateral decision, okay.
Okay, so I think maybe we'd look for a motion that these signs be allowed to say temporarily.
Well, I don't think you can do that.
You don't want to do that either?
No, I'm looking at your agenda.
It's not action.
It's a discussion item.
It's just a discussion. That's why I say we need to get a report back from the city.
Well, okay, let me read this.
What direction we're going to take.
The staff report said...
So that we can take action.
No, I agree. But what I'm saying is that we allow them to say temporarily until we do that. That's what I was...
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, before a motion's made, if I can just mention that if this is postponed and they're allowed, I mean, these same exhibits are going to come back to the commission. I think if staff could get direction, does this look like it's inconsistent with the Luck Memorial Library, for example, or it's acceptable because it has a certain character to it which matches the historic character of downtown? I mean, we're really looking for that kind of direction tonight.
Okay. So I hear what you're saying. So I think that's the kind of staff report we need. And I'm not taking exception to your staff report. I'm just saying that I think that we should hear a presentation about, this was the sign 40 years ago. There's a sign up there that says City Council. I don't know where that came from. But I think it used to be attached to the building. Do you know, Georgiana? But anyway, so I would think that if the city were an applicant and they were coming to us to ask for signs to be approved, they'd have the background, the information. So I think we would look for that. So I think the direction here would be that we ask staff to come back to us with the recommendations. I think the public signage, and you have the word for them, whatever they're called, civic signs, I think they're appropriate in this town. We need them. Mayberry had them, so we should have those. So I think we'd just like to provide that direction. And then the next thing I'd like to hear from the commission is whether or not we can allow these signs to stay up temporarily until the appropriate applications have come back to us with the staff report. Does anybody have an objection to that? Okay. So is that clear enough direction for staff?
Yes.
All right. Let's go back. I think that was the final item. Okay. Members of the Planning Commission, any comments?
Yeah. I was talking to a business person, and he felt there was a lot of traffic on 3rd Street. There was high speed, excessive speed. And was talking about, any way of using traffic calming procedures, bumpers or whatever it would take to slow the traffic down. And so my thought was to agendize that for the next meeting to have a discussion. Then I understood there is a traffic study being done on 3rd Street, or 4th Street.
4th Street, yeah.
So if they're doing a traffic study on 4th, rather than have them come back a second time, could that be extended for them to do a traffic study on 3rd Street and see if the warrants to justify different kinds of traffic calming things? Because the faster they go through, the less they see. That's got to be an item. Plus, it's also dangerous to go fast.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that myself, moving out quickly. So I would like to have that item agendized and invite the San Juan Committee or whoever represents the merchants on that street, invite the representatives and say, look, we're going to talk about this. Please come and be part of it, unless you don't want anything done.
Well, I think we want something done. I think it opens up a much broader issue as to what should be done about downtown parking and...
No, this is just right now. Right now, just the speed. Yeah.
Okay, well, my point though was it opens up a much broader issue as to what should be done, like on 3rd Street, the downtown issue relative to parking, realignment of parking spaces, like on one side than the other side, which would impact and, create a traffic calming situation. There's been lots of plans, lots of discussion about that. Relative to the immediate concern of public safety, as my recollection serves me, if we're going to do anything, whether it's put in a speed bump, change the speed limit, or anything like that, it would require the traffic survey. What is the status of the 4th Street traffic surveys? And then secondly, if staff comment on whether you feel this is an appropriate item for the Planning Commission to address, or should it be addressed by the council and that it's more of a regulatory issue? That's a tricky question, I know.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, so the City Council has directed that we prepare a traffic study, including a speed study on 4th Street at the request of neighbors in that area, and to do a speed study, determine what the actual speeds are, and then develop recommendations for traffic calming, which would be a budgetary matter for the City Council's consideration next spring. That work has not yet begun, and probably will not begin until after school is back in session after the holidays, so that we have a good measure of the actual activity. Within the 3rd Street area, just remind you of what you've been speaking, that is the historic district, and the kinds of traffic calming measures that might be appropriate on 4th Street are probably not appropriate in the historic district. The speed limit on 3rd Street in the historic district is 15 miles an hour. A traffic study required under the highway code would not apply in the downtown because we can't radar enforce 15 mile an hour speed limits there in any event, but you're right, I observed others that have gone beyond 15 miles an hour. I wouldn't say that the speeding is excessive in my judgment, but it is certainly, it exceeds 15 miles an hour from time to time. But I do believe any adjustments that would involve the installation of facilities or new plantings or new striping are budgetary matters that are within the jurisdiction of the City Council. And if the Planning Commission has recommendations along those lines, it would be appropriate next spring to forward those on to the Council.
See, the council doesn't do this legwork. That's what the commission is for. We see something, we run up. If they got a problem, it's a land use matter, they don't do it.
No,
They say, commission?
That's clearly understood. But what your original request was, I believe, was to have an additional traffic study done. So it hasn't started yet. Do we...
I'd like to agendize it to get some public input on it. And that, like I said, if the council is going to spend money, they're going to have to realize that there's a justification or there's support for it. The public, having this as a public hearing, we get the input from the business community publicly, and then it goes up to council.
I agree. Where public comment would also occur. The 4th Street issue, when it comes back to City Council, what form is that coming in? Is it going to be a deliverable as to what the result of the study was, or is there going to be further discussion before it launches?
The deliverable will be a report and recommendation from our city engineer, Harris Associates, based on the traffic speed survey and their professional judgment as to which options for traffic calming would be appropriate to address any speed issues that are addressed there. That would be a discussion item for the City Council. Do we wish to pursue it? How much do we want to spend?
Right.
Those kinds of issues. That's why I mentioned...
To impact them, or to affect the measures.
Yes.
Do you have any idea how much this traffic study is going to cost?
I've actually asked them to give me that specific proposal back. The council said they expected, I think I told them, could be $10,000 to $15,000 for the traffic calming study.
Yeah. Would it be appropriate with the members here that we suggest to the City Council that when they undertake that work effort, that they also consider addressing the 3rd Street issue that you've identified? And then I think then we would have the data, if you will, that would help to identify the root cause. And then moving forward from there, as you said, my guess would be the planning or the City Council might direct that a lot of that informational stuff that goes to the public as to, like, if there was any desire to put out planners or whatever those measures would be, short of a roundabout or something in the middle of town, that we could address it at that point. But I think that the first, we can have a discussion in the public comment, and I totally understand what you're saying, but we're not going to have a tool in our toolkit that we can say, and here's the report, and this is what it says about what traffic really is. So I think if we could get approval from the council to add that while those folks are doing the existing traffic study, that would make a lot of sense. Does anybody disagree with that?
I'm curious, does a traffic study have to be done for each individual street to do any type of traffic calming? Does it have to be, for example, I know there's big concerns about Monterey Street, and there's big concerns about First Street. We can't do like a shotgun approach, I guess.
Did you want to answer that?
Can we?
Well, the so-called traffic calming study that the City Council has directed requires first the development of base data about how much speeding occurs, when does it occur, what time of day, what day of the week. That will probably be done with speed tubes. The tubes will be placed across the roadway, and the computer will record the speed of and time of day. And then we'll know whether the issue is in the commute hours, as is expected, or other times of the day or days of the week. And that would lead to different solutions, options for different solutions. To do a comprehensive traffic speed survey would require the placement of tubes at a variety of streets, and that's more expensive, and you have to have an objective in mind. Once we got the data, what are we going to do with it?
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I said, I've had people talk to me about Monterey Street, First Street. I'm sure we've all probably heard those. So, well, it seems like it's kind of to tell you the truth, it's an epidemic right now. People are hauling.
I couldn't agree more. It's citywide. I mean, I live on Wayne Street, and people say, do you know how fast people are driving down our street? And it's, and Heidi, we'll give you the opportunity to speak here. I recognize that, 4th and 3rd Street are the main corridors. And it's also been a pet peeve of mine that many times, like a new ambulance crew here will be in town, and they drive the ambulance code 3 down 3rd Street on a Saturday afternoon when there's a lot of people down there. But I think there's a lot of value if we can get it for, if there's a value add here to do both of those streets that run parallel, 4th Street and 3rd Street, if the city council would approve that. And that would then give us, again, I know I'm being redundant, the core data or information to determine what the root cause is, and bring it to the public to address whatever measures might be appropriate that the council would approve from a budgetary perspective.
See, my original thing had been to get the public stirred up enough to get the council to do what we want to do. But if we can do it the other way, I can live with that.
Yeah, and I don't think I would disagree with you there. I just think there's this opportunity that's going to occur after the kids are back in school, that they'll be here doing a similar task. And I don't know, it could be cookie cutter, maybe putting out 2 tubes is $15,000 and writing a report. So, 2 more is, $30,000. I don't know, but I think that's...
Well, I'm in the wrong business.
I know, well, but you also realize, and the reason those studies are done is because of the liability. You can't just throw up a stop sign. We did that in this town once. You can't just throw up a stop sign. You can't just throw up speed limit signs or speed bumps because, when somebody gets hurt, then there's liability. It doesn't address the immediate problem, like people getting in accidents on, on 4th Street already. But, all right, public comment.
Heidi Baltz, 41 Monterey Street. What I was told, I'm assuming that it's true, that Roger told me that development was going to do a public traffic study, and that was based on impact fees or whatever when they do the development going through for 3rd Street. Because when I was having so much problems on Monterey, and then the reason that it kind of went to the city council before it went to planning commission, the planning commission hasn't met, and this has been going on for like 6 months, and I think people did have more of a public comment because you were dealing with the racetrack, and then there wasn't any meetings, and that's why it kind of got shoved to the city council. But also there may be money available at that development to handle your 3rd Street. That's what I was told before.
So
do due diligence and find out
yeah,
what
so,
the funds are.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. Any additional public comment? Okay, so I'm not aware of that, and one of you gentlemen might be aware because you're on the planning commission at the time, but I don't know about any traffic study for 3rd Street because of the developments. So if there is some money, I think that the council should be aware of that, or that work should be undertaken. Yeah.
Well, let me comment on that, and perhaps clarifying what Ms. Balls was speaking about. So this commission knows, or as some of you do, you approved the conditions of approval for the Rancho Vista project, and it includes the actual improvement of a portion of 3rd Street. The city ordinance does require that all new developments pay development impact fees. One of those impact fees is a transportation impact fee, the proceeds of which are to address traffic needs throughout the community, not to necessarily do studies, but to actually make traffic improvements. And when there are sufficient funds available, we have a big long list of streets that need improvement that we would use those for. So the allocation of the revenue from that project or any new project that pays impact fees is a part of the city's budget process, and a capital improvement list was adopted with the budget this year. It did not include a study of 3rd Street, but I realize you're talking about something different here, but there is no separate fund being generated by the Rancho Vista project for studies of 3rd Street.
Okay, so if it's appropriate, I think we'd just like to provide some direction to staff to find out what the additional costs would be to tag on 3rd Street to that study and seek authorization from the council to do so.
Sounds good.
All right? Is that good?
Okay.
All right.
You know, in the August meeting, there was a comment about a joint meeting with the San Benito and Hollister councils.
Yeah, so I sent out a request to the two of them, and I don't know if it's the same situation because they're about to add new members or what have you. They said that they would be willing to meet, but they also did not have a specific agenda at the time.
Well, one thing that seems to be pretty hot and heavy throughout the the media is housing.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to Matt, I said, you know, don't just say we want to talk about housing. We all know the problems. That's not an issue. Damn it, come up and give me some solutions. I would like to have people come up with solutions. You've got the housing authorities, you've got the various public builders, because anything that's being built here, even our second homes, are going to go market rate unless there's some control for it. Right. So if they get to you again on doing something, focus solutions, not state problems.
I think we had 3 items that we as a city were looking to discuss, and that was absolutely one of them. Okay, additional staff comments?
Mr. Chairman, under C, I'll have a series of comments, and I know James wanted to bring an issue to your attention.
Can I just one thing?
Scott.
It's kind of in light of some of the city council meetings here in the last month or so. I'm a little concerned as a person who's been appointed on a commission about some intimidation tactics that have been going on, bullying, coerciveness, whatever you want to call it, by some city council members. It's definitely not what our founders, I'm sure, thought about when they created our republic. And in light of that, I'm very happy that you're still our chair. I appreciate everything you've ever done for this city over the last, how long we've known each other, 25 years. And I think some of the actions that we're taking last month is going to go down in history as a dark spot in this town's history. And this is coming from somebody who's been here for 52 years and 6 generations. I'm not happy. I'm not happy at all. I think somebody poked a hornet's nest, personally. So I just wanted to express that. Okay, thank you.
Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a project that we wanted to share with the Commission. It's just been submitted. It was submitted, I think, the week before Thanksgiving. And it's a proposal for an 18-acre parcel on the south side of Highway 156, just across from downtown. And it's a produce transfer proposal. It would be about a 15,000 square foot warehouse building with just a handful, 2 to 4 small trucks that would come in, or 4 to 5 small trucks that would come in, drop off produce, and then 2 to 4 larger trucks would then take them to their destinations. So we'll be looking at that. It does require a CEQA environmental evaluation. We'll be looking at truck access points, noise, dust, those kinds of things. But so that's going to take a little bit of time, but it will be coming to the Planning Commission early next year.
Can you show us specifically, James, where that's at?
Yeah, it's a good suggestion.
Well, one day we'll have like TVs and PowerPoints.
So it's on this side of San Juan, Old San Juan Hollister Road. I think it is that parcel.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's this large 18-acre parcel right there. And the routes going west would, clearly go through the intersection. We'll be looking at whether it's okay that routes going east, come off of the road and go back onto the highway.
So is that the proposed cannabis zone there? Okay.
And our new well is there also, right? Isn't that where the well we just traded for?
Okay. All right, so they're going to supposedly submit an application, is that what you're saying, James?
Oh, yes, there'll be an application coming to the Planning Commission shortly. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Anything else, James?
No, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, city manager comments?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, with your indulgence, I have 4 things I'd like to report on, and maybe you'd have questions after each, rather than me just zipping through all 4.
Is there a written report back here?
No, there isn't.
Okay, very good.
So the first is with respect to the commercial cannabis facilities town hall meeting scheduled for tomorrow evening in this building, this room, at 6 p.m.
Folks, if we could, I'm sorry, if we could actually keep your voices down. Thank you.
So I want to invite the community to attend the town hall meeting here at 6 p.m. tomorrow. The purpose of the town hall meeting is for a subcommittee of the City Council, comprised of Mayor Martirana and Mr. DeVries, to present their ideas for what was once called this evening a draft ordinance. I would call it a first draft of an ordinance. It's a rough draft of an ordinance. It's their proposal that we actually authorize in San Juan Bautista commercial cannabis facilities in certain designated areas subject to certain conditions. The purpose of the town hall is to present those ideas and to get community feedback. Because we anticipate that more than a majority or more of planning commissioners would attend such a meeting, if nothing else because of your interest in the issue, and that a majority of the city council members may attend, is being publicly noticed as a city council meeting and publicly noticed as a planning commission meeting. But the only agenda is to hear these comments. So no action is anticipated. If the commission feels of a mind, you might want to later agendize a discussion about how the commission ought to be involved. But I can say, with commenting on an earlier public comment, that the scheme that is anticipated by the subcommittee is that commercial cannabis facilities will be allowed in certain designated areas, and those areas will be designated by amendments to the zoning code, which requires approval of the Planning Commission, either through an overlay zone of some sort or a change in the uses that are allowed in a particular zone, perhaps subject to a conditional use permit. All of those different options are available. But the implementation of the designated areas would be through the zoning code, and that would be coming before the Planning Commission eventually. With respect to sensitive land uses, the state law actually prohibits the location in any city at any time of commercial cannabis facilities within the so-called sensitive land use areas, and those are essentially radii around schools and parks and places where children congregate. So any ordinance that is proposed or any zoning that the Planning Commission might consider could not allow commercial cannabis facilities in those sensitive land use areas in any event. And when the community sees that map tomorrow, you see that much of the town is covered by those sensitive land uses, and that if it is the desire to allow commercial cannabis facilities, there are only a limited number of places where that could occur. So that's what I want to say about cannabis. Is there any question or comment about that? No. Next, I wanted to talk about development impact fees. There was a little bit of earlier discussion about that. Any community's growth management strategy typically includes the requirement that new development pay fees to offset the costs that that new development imposes on the infrastructure of the existing community. And San Juan Bautista has such a system of development impact fees that were adopted in 2007 and most recently updated in 2013. The City Council has asked James and I to report back to the Council next meeting, December the 19th, on what it would take in time and money to update those development impact fees again. And I just wanted to alert you that that report will be on the agenda of the City Council on December the 19th.
Okay. Sounds good.
There's also some reference, Mr. Commissioner Friels mentioned the water wells. We'll be reporting on December the 19th on actions taken by us in response to a compliance order from the state of California. Recall that we are unable to authorize new connections to the water system until two conditions have been met. First, we have to demonstrate to the community and to our state regulators that we have, or that we're delivering water that is below the nitrate action levels, minimum contamination levels. And secondly, that we have a robust water supply system such that if one of our wells goes down for any reason, we have sufficient capacity in another well to meet the average daily demand of our community. To accomplish that, we were asked to submit by December the 1st a compliance action plan, which we have done. And it sets forth a series of timetables and milestones for the completion of well 5. That's the well that is located just east of the Copperleaf subdivision. Much of the work has been done. The remaining work is to connect it to the city's water supply system and to energize it. We need electricity to operate the pumps, and we anticipate that work will be completed in the spring.
Question, Ed, the report that you said that is being prepared, who is that submitted to?
So we've already submitted the compliance action plan, and that's to the Drinking Water Supply Division of the State Water Resources Board, I believe is the name of the agency.
That's fair. To the state, got it.
That's why, so I use shorthand like our state regulators.
Yeah, right.
Jan Swigert by name. And then secondly, we are working on, to demonstrate the robust water supply system, we need another well of sufficient capacity and water quality that we can meet those needs. And I'll be reporting to the City Council on December the 19th that we have reached business terms on a deal with the landowner and the owner of an ag well which we're calling Well 6. That's Mr. Dale Koch, that will allow for the development of that well and in its connection to the city's water supply. And we anticipate that that would all occur by probably the late summer of 2018. And the good news is that we'll be able to express to our community with confidence that we're delivering water that meets the water quality standards and that we have a robust and redundant supply.
Where is that one located?
It's the ag well that already exists on the Koch property. It's one of the purple areas just south of San Juan, Hollister Road there.
I think, isn't it where all the equipment for the pellet plant is staged right now?
That's the transaction that I'll be addressing with the City Council is complicated because it involves a trade of land. Where the pellet plant equipment is actually already owned by the city.
Okay.
That is the site of what we call well number 3.
Right.
Okay.
And we're going to trade well number 3, which does not have sufficient water quality or capacity, with Mr. Koch for what we're going to call well number 6, because his well does have sufficient water quality and capacity to meet our needs.
What would happen to well number 3, just out of curiosity?
Well, he will own it, and he can either use it for his agricultural purposes or abandon it.
Okay, cool. Anything else?
The last one I wanted to report to you is that you may be aware that I have certainly told many people in the community we were preparing a comprehensive report on the Rancho Vista subdivision. And this would be a report contemplated by the development agreement. The Commission approved the development agreement and it calls for an annual report. This would be the first of those annual reports. And it will be comprehensive in the sense that we will describe the approval process, the conditions of approval, the status of the conditions of approval, and I'll bring that to the City Council on January the 16th. There have been some earlier expectation, including mine, that we might be able to do it as early as this month. But we're making progress on a series of issues, and we'll be bringing back to the Council on the 16th. And those issues will include, as contemplated by the development agreement, a series of supplemental agreements to clarify some points in the development agreement, to, as I say, to report on the conditions of approval and their status, to have the council approve the reimbursement agreement that the commission approved and that were in the conditions of approval for the 18-inch sewer line. Some of you may recall that as a condition of approval, Rancho Vista agreed to, or was required to, and agreed to install an 18-inch sewer line, which is a line that would not be used by that subdivision, but which would connect a future site of a future wastewater treatment plant to the community. This was an opportunity to get the line in the ground while they were working on it, but the condition of approval said they need to be reimbursed for those costs. I need to have the City Council now approve the actual reimbursement agreement, whose terms were not specified in the conditions of approval, just that there would be one. And so under what terms? And so we now have to bring that back to the council. And finally, the one issue of great concern I know to many neighbors is the status of the lot reconfiguration on Phase 7. That's the area along 3rd Street behind the Creek Bridge neighborhood. And we're working with the developers to ensure that the lot reconfiguration there is consistent with the tentative map, and we'll be reporting that